All right, off camera, I've cut some cookies to put in here. This is Mesquite, and our channel is usually on bowl turning or Christmas ornaments and everything, but we do a lot of charcuterie tables, and that seems to be a hot item. Epoxy, we were at a craft show last weekend. Everybody was interested in doing epoxy, so we thought, we've been doing it for a couple of years. We thought we would show you a little bit, very simply, how to start off this. It's not going to be real detailed. This silicone mold really simplifies it. If you have to make a mold every time, it's a pain in the butt. So we've learned a few things. One of them is, if you want to do this and not have to refinish, run it through the planer and the drum sander and everything, and you want the bottom to look pretty good, we've got these little door bumpers that we use. We own a cabinet shop. Got these door bumpers, and we found out that if we take these and put on the bottom, I'm not going to film every step of this because it's going to be long. We have to come back to it later. To get a good coat on the bottom, we're going to double these. It's going to let the epoxy run under the bottom and be finished, and hopefully we won't have to do much finish. Put that in there. Like I say, I did this off camera and I got them to where they'd fit. So that's going to let the epoxy go under the bottom, and we usually pour what we call our sticker coat in there, which sticks the epoxy to it. We let it dry and we put another coat. And what that keeps you from having to do, otherwise you would have to hold these down and keep them from floating, because they will float because the wood's really light. Some woods may not be heavy enough, maybe heavy enough not to float, but this one's certainly not. Although Mesquite's heavy, this is really doty. I think it's going to make a really pretty board. We're going to do some kind of blue background to it. And I'm not going to show you the whole mixing process, but basically you do not want to undermix this. We're using an epoxy made by Super Clear and a black diamond blue. I think it's called what? Blue slate. On a project like this, usually I want it to be to where you can see through it. I don't want it to be completely opaque. We're going to get up on top of the wood and let it go down through all these holes. One of our biggest problems on this project is going to be bubbles, because all these places are going to want to leak air. So we've got our 5-minute mix. One of the things I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to store in some of these holes. Start filling some of that up. And it's one thing about the epoxy, if you hadn't used it, it's going to seek its lowest level. And the biggest problem with building your own forms is, if you don't get every crack sealed, you are going to have a mess, because this stuff is going to find its lowest level. And I'm going to rake over the top of this and take this popsicle stick and rake it down in some of these holes. And I want enough on the bottom to stick this on the initial coat so it doesn't float on the next one. But I'm sealing the wood. I'm getting enough down in there to stick it to the bottom, and we'll come back tomorrow sometime and put another coat on. I've done a Mesquite bowl. I did one on our channel. So this is not what we usually make our videos on, but I've had so much interest in it that I decided to make one. You can go to our YouTube channel. The name of it is Bowls by Hilton, and we are getting fairly popular. We do a lot of different things. We make Christmas ornaments, bowls. I made a Mesquite rolling pin. made duck calls, house utensils. We got a pigtail video on how to make a pigtail, which is basically a meat turner. And as you can see, this didn't even cover the bottom. I mean, we still like a lot of epoxy. But it'll get there. And we're going to come back when we pour our next coat. Okay, second pour. Let's set up overnight. This is the one that's going to have all the bubbles. Because I'm filling all these holes in this holy mesquite. And we'll have to babysit it for a little while. Really slow set would have been a lot better on this. Because it gives it time to... What happens in these epoxy pours with the bubbles, and the reason you use a heat gun, is the top of it starts drying, and it's not dry on the bottom, and it doesn't let the bubbles out. So you're essentially you're heating the top to release it. Heat releases epoxy, and it lets the bubbles escape. As you can see, it's starting to bubble all over. The heat gun will take care of it. Just have to babysit it for a while. Probably gonna have to do another pour on this, of course. I'll take my little popsicle stick in a minute. I'll drag all this around down in the sides in preparation for the next pour, which will cover everything in this pour. Okay, I'm gonna hit my holes first. This is probably gonna be enough epoxy, but I wanna give it time to go down in those holes. We have popped some bubbles off camera while I was mixing. Just keep up with it, because if you got a bubble there, the epoxy's not gonna keep going down in there. And like I said before, this stuff's self-leveling. You don't have to really worry about it. It's going to find its lowest level. And by the way, I didn't show you on there, but this table is fairly level, but when we're pouring one like this, we check it. We got a little torpedo level here. We check it with, and if it's not level, we shim it. If you're working with a real solid piece of wood, you can seal the wood first. It wouldn't have done any good on this. We had so many holes in this, it was ridiculous. And this mesquite, I only worked with it just a little bit. I did not realize how dark it was. Black walnut, just thought it was dark. This is 2 shades or 3 shades darker than black walnut. I want to really get this where I need it, which is mostly on that. I can move that around a little bit later. And you will have to babysit this a little bit. Like I say, if you use a slow set, it's not quite as bad, because what it's doing, it's drying on top, and it won't let the air from below escape. So that's why I say the slow set a lot of times is better. You can take like that bubble there, you can just take your little stick, hit it. If you don't want to crank up your heat gun, just hit it and drop down in there. Sometimes you pick up a little bit from over here to put in there. We ain't got quite enough. I got a hole right here. I'm gonna pick some up, drop it in there, pop that bubble. Big old bubble coming up here, just pop it. One coming up there. What you don't want to do is when you get through, have these bubbles in your epoxy, because it does not look very attractive at all. And we've had some pretty unattractive boards. This mold here, we've probably made 25 boards in it. We're looking at a bigger one to make like end tables, because when you make the molds every time, you have to get more for it. If you got a reusable mold, of course you're cutting your time down. And time is money, unless it's a hobby, then it doesn't make any difference. And if you want to make your molds, that's fine. You can use, we use Tyvek insulation, Tyvek tape. I've done them with scrap black sand from your glass shop. It works good. And we haven't had very good luck using the Tyvek boards, reusing them. You can take a piece of plywood and cover it with Tyvek tape, which is basically insulation tape, like they used to tape insulation with. And we've got a big mold that we use, a 4x8. It's just the bottom is wrapped with Tyvek tape, and we make the sides to fit whatever we're pouring. If you do have a bubble, especially in the clear parts, and you get through and it's dried, you can take a drill bit or a Dremel and hit it and fill it in with clear epoxy. As you can see, I still got bubbles coming up. And so we've been checking every 5 minutes. You can't just do this and forget it, especially this last pour. If it's bubble down deep, it doesn't show too bad. But if it's on top, see right here, see this bubble? It just bubbled up. It's going to bubble up again. If you don't hit it, it looks atrocious. So you just have to, if you don't, here's another one, look right here. I've popped that bubble 15 times. That means there's a hole down there and that air is trying to escape. It actually left on its own that time. Some of them do, but I'm telling you, if you don't stay after it, this may not be your cup of tea. That's just the way it is. That's the reason when you do a bowl, at a bubble right here. See that coming up? That coming up just a minute. It popped itself, which is fine. But if you leave it, you're gonna have a bad place. And so you just gotta stay after it. Look right here. The bubble popped up. No telling how many times I popped that bubble. It popped itself. That's fine. There's another one right there. It might pop itself. It may not. But you can imagine what that bubble would look like in your finished product. It's steady seeping down into that wood. And if you don't heat that top part so it'll release that bubble, then you're going to have that bubble. And then you're going to sand, and you're going to recoat, and that's a lot of trouble. So pop it. And just keep after it. Particularly last night, we didn't have quite enough retsin in there. We got our bubbles here. We got indentions. So what I've decided I'm going to do, I'm going to run it through the belt sander. I'm going to pop it out, run it through the belt sander, and I'll put it back in there and put some more epoxy in it. Now, if you didn't need to pour it again, or even if you do need to pour it again, these bubbles, if you don't take a drill or a Dremel or something and get those out in your next pour, you're gonna have those. They're gonna be still there. So if the belt sander doesn't take these out, which it probably will, I'll take a drill and I'll hit these, and when your epoxy goes down in there, they're gonna disappear. I mean, they're gonna be gone. We ain't got a perfect finish on the bottom, but part of that's those holes coming through. Because as you can see, I got a good bit of finish on the bottom from putting those bumpers in. You can't find them. They're gone. You don't even see them. And it raises it up and lets the resin go in around the bottom. And for the bottom, that's okay. It's okay. If you didn't have a belt sander, I happen to have a good drum sander, you could have fixed every one of these and then poured another coat on it. This is that sharp edge I told you it always leaves in the mold. And you could sand or file that off and finish it. But what I do, I take the table saw and I just cut the whole side off, cut the ends off, and we got it. And that hole there was one of our bubbling places. It quit bubbling. That one's in the center. There was a place right there, and it settled, and it didn't settle enough to get it out. So, like I say, the easiest thing for me to do is put it through the drum sander. But if you don't have a drum sander, well, you could use a random orbit sander or whatever. But you could have fixed these in the mold with a Dremel or drill or both, and poured another coat, and it would have been fine. But this is just the easiest thing for me to do. So I'm gonna run it through the drum sander in a second. About all I can get out of that. So I'm gonna try to spread it, see what we got. What's always amazing to me is how you can be so rough with the sanding. It just takes up, covers up. You can start seeing it. Actually, the rougher you sand, the better bond you get. So you don't want to sand it real fine. You want to have a good chemical bond to it. I'll move this over the edge and I'll come back around the edge. Make sure we're covering everything. Get all my edges first. Now, if you were gonna sand this all the way to a finish, you would need to sand it fine. But if you're gonna put a flood coat over the top of it, which is what we're doing now, it does not have to be that fine because it fills in all those sanding marks. Make sure we cover everything. No dry spots. Like I say, we were just about out of epoxy. I probably would have put a little more. But we didn't have a little more. So we'll do the best we can with what we got. Covered. Take our heat gun and spread it around. All right. I didn't really like how this turned out. Several things. We've got a lot of bubbles. This was very porous. We addressed the bubbles, did another pour. You know, a lot of people wouldn't show you how much trouble I had with this. Some of these we turn out in these molds, we turn out perfect the first time. We don't have to do anything to them. I don't like how much blue I've got on the wood here. It masks the wood. We had planed this down or sanded this down before, and this looks a lot better. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna knock this out of the form. We have to trim it a little bit so it'll go in the planer. My home planer is only 12 inches wide. So we're gonna get it to where it goes through the planer. We're gonna sand it. We're not gonna put it back in the mold. We're gonna do a flood coat on it. And let's see how it turns out. Okay, went through a lot of steps, still not perfect. Had a lot of bubbles, punky wood. This is mesquite. We cut cookies on the bandsaw and put them in our 12 by 24 mold and poured several pours of epoxy. Didn't like it because we had colored epoxy over some of the wood. Planed it back down, ran it through the drum sander, and put another coat on it. But I think it turned out pretty good. The mesquite's almost black. I have not worked with much mesquite, and this certainly wasn't solid enough to do bowls unless we put it in epoxy. So we decided to use some of it for our tables. If you like this video, this is the first that we've done that's not turning, and we do other things besides turning. We do other boards. This is a classic piece of cedar that we did in charcuterie board. We do, this is purple heart, walnut, cherry, and maple boards that we do. We do cutting boards, just simple cutting boards. We do some little fancier boards. That's got seashells, of course, and that's cherry. But we're going to start doing some more of this on our channel. If you like seeing this kind of stuff, we're going to add it. Leave some comments if you want to see more of these boards made. Subscribe to our channel. We would appreciate it. Give us a thumbs up. Any comments would be welcome. Thanks and have a great day.